reading from the Holy Gospel according to St. John. A man named John was sent from God. He came for testimony to testify to the light, so that all who might believe through him. He was not the light, but came to testify to the light. And this is the testimony of John. When the Jews from Jerusalem sent priests and Levites to him, they asked him, "Who are you?" He admitted and did not deny it, but admitted, "I am not the Christ." So they asked him, "What are you then? Are you Elijah?" He said, "I am not." "Are you the prophet?" He answered, "No." Then they said to him, "Who are you that we can give an answer to those who sent us? What do you have to say for yourself?" He said, "I am the voice of the one crying in the desert, 'Make straight the way of the Lord,' as Isaiah the prophet said." Some Pharisees were also sent, and they asked him, "Then why do you baptize, if you are not the Christ or Elijah or the prophet?" And John answered them, "I baptize with water, but there is one among you whom you do not recognize, the one who is coming after me, whose sandal strap I am not worthy to untie." This happened in Bethany across the Jordan, where John was baptizing. And this is the good news of Jesus Christ.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
I really have to get into feeling invisible spirit coming here with missing 11 teeth and dressed in pink. So, we all have these, right? And isn't it amazing how, you could be somebody from California. "Oh, send me a pic of that," right? And we don't think twice about it. Wait a minute. You can take a picture here in New Jersey, press a button, and that picture shows up in California. It's amazing when you think of how incredible this thing is. It's full of programs and electromagnetic currents that transmit energy, that transmit signals all over the place. Now, and Lord knows I have no clue. I know where the on-off button is and texting and things like that. But, so there's a lot in this that I totally don't understand. And I definitely don't understand how it works. It's way beyond my understanding. But, you can get it, right? When you think about this is absolutely mind-boggling that in this, what you can transmit, It's like, you could even say something like, "Hey Siri, what's the church that's most aligned with the mind and heart of the living God?" The church that's most aligned with the is Good Shepherd Church. 1890 Whitesville Road, Township. Now we know Siri's not in there, right? But it's amazing how you could talk to this thing and it gives you answers. But so when we think of the phone and all the things that are on that, and all the things that we don't understand about that, what about ourselves as human beings? To say that we really understand who we are, we understand how we operate, we understand there's so many unbelievable, intricate details about being human to understand. So complex, so incredible, probably way beyond this. So now, in the first 2 weeks of Advent, we talked about going back, like Ebenezer Scrooge, going back to the Christmas past, going back into our childhood, going back into running the film of our life, and taking a look at, where we were hurt, where we were disappointed, where we maybe had our heart broken, felt betrayed, something like that. I mean, probably every one of us here has had that, or we've experienced the death of somebody that we love. and our heart gets broken over that. There's so many things, and it's like, how does that impact on us? How does that impact on the way we see life when we have like a perception? And yet it's interesting when you think back of Ebenezer. Just think of this the other day. So now Ebenezer, right, would have been like, well, I'm a curmudgeon, I'm miserable, I'm negative, my heart is closed, that's it, and I'm just going to like live out the rest of my life. There's no changing. I can't overcome that my mother died in childbirth and my father hated me because my birth caused the death of his wife, Ebenezer. I can't overcome that. And yet, something happens to Ebenezer, right? Something happens where he experiences the spirit world coming to him and showing him his past and his present and then the future. And then a miracle occurs for Ebenezer. And all of a sudden this guy is like alive. His heart is open. He can't wait to buy the big turkey for Tiny Tim and his family. He can't give away the money fast enough. He's just alive in his mind and his heart. It almost says that like we can overcome any heartache. We can overcome any disappointment. That who we are right now, nothing has ever happened in our life to prevent us from being alive. Being alive in our heart and in our mind. Right? Because how did that happen to Ebenezer? I thought he couldn't change. I thought that the hurt was too overwhelming for him. And yet that wasn't true. When he stayed open to it. And he had that experience. So now as we move into this third Sunday of Advent, and I've mentioned a little bit of this before, and I want to recommend this to anybody to look it up. It's called Heart Math or Heart Intelligence. So what they're discovering, and this is a scientific fact, that your heart has its own nervous system. Your heart has its own form of intelligence. In fact, your heart sends messages to your brain 9 times more than your brain to your heart. Your heart has an intuitive knowing. Your heart has an electromagnetic current to it. When you go and you have is it an EKG? An EKG, what they're measuring the electricity that's emanating, we get the doctor up here, to talk about how it's feeling the electromagnetic energy of your heart. So that your heart is emanating and sending out signals all the time. Wow. Just like your phone sends a signal or a picture to California, your heart is always sending out a magnetic signal to life itself and within yourself. So when Jesus says the kingdom of heaven is within you, the kingdom of heaven is in your midst. So right now, every one of us here, think about this. Every one of us here is emanating an energy. We're emanating an electromagnetic field to life. And then what we emanate out in the life, also we experience. So Ebenezer was a curmudgeon, miserable, negative, and everybody couldn't stand him. And he lived all by himself, having porridge, And then all of a sudden his heart was opened up. And he had a bunch of friends. He's playing games with his nephew. So that our heart affects everything. It affects the quality of our life. Where your heart, if you come from your heart, we're going to talk about a little exercise. If you come from your heart, do you know that your immune system increases? Your ability and your clarity of making a decision becomes more clear. You have a problem. If you go into your heart, you're going to find a creative solution to your problem. Isn't it interesting? When we were all unborn children in our mother's womb, do you know the first thing that formed in you? The first thing that formed in you was your heart, not your brain, your heart. It's the first thing after like 5 weeks. Your heart, there's a pulse, there's a pump. That the power of the human heart is beyond what we could possibly imagine. So when we come from a place of joy, of love, of compassion, tenderness, and forgiveness, your heart changes. And that sends a signal to the neurons in your brain, and then they change. Where if we're negative and angry and bitter and resentful, that also impacts on the neuron. It sends in the signal of our heart, which then goes to the brain. So powerful. You know, now when I think of this, it's like, okay, this is like the third Sunday of Advent. Now, you're not talking about religion. You didn't even mention Jesus yet. What's going on here? How religious is this? You know? And yet, you wonder. I don't know whether Jesus knew all the scientific information about the heart. But he knew. He knew because he was aligned with the living God. That the only possible place you could come from in your life, if you want to live powerfully, is you've got to come from a place of love. You've got to come from a place of forgiveness. You've got to be compassionate. You've got to be tender. You've got to welcome everybody. The lepers, the Samaritan woman, I don't care who it was, all the people. Everybody's included in Jesus, in the mind of God. Jesus knew this. Jesus knew this, and he communicated this to those around him. Now again, keep in mind, like we were saying last week, people were following this guy. People wanted to gather and listen to him, and he was talking about the pure of heart, and the kingdom of God is within you, and you got to love, and you got to forgive 7 times 70, or there's no limit to it. And they were drawn to him. No sense of him being the Christ, the Messiah, dying on a cross. No. There was something about Jesus that drew everybody to him. And what was that? Jesus totally was aligned with the mind and the heart of God. To really tap into how brilliant, how incredible the living God is. How many, I always think about like the sun. I mean, like, what do we think about? Well, the tanning index was a 7.9. Make sure you get your copper tone or your Panama Jack or something. Wait a minute. There's this ball of fire 93 million miles away from us that everything just in our solar system is perfect to the 10th of a degree. Oxygen, nitrogen, distance, speed, everything. Come on. Right? And the God of this universe, the God that created everything in absolute perfection, says to us, you know what life is really all about? You want to be a human being worth your salt? Come from a place of love. And what's amazing, what they're discovering is that when you come from a place of love, your body is healthy. You are resilient. You are flexible. You are creative. I mean, it goes on and on and on. Doesn't that, it makes sense. So in other words, like what we're doing here right now is really, when we come to a church like this, what are we doing? We're aligning ourselves with the living God and the mind of this God who created all that is. And when we do that, we're aligning ourselves with who we are. Who we are. So powerful. So beautiful. And when we think about being human, and let's face it, we can all think of some terrible things. They were talking about all these girls from Lebanon, they live in so much fear that there's all this bedwetting and things like that. I mean, it's just like 1 in a million examples. Or people that we know and love that pass away, that die way before what we want. Cancer and heart attacks and war and all the things that we have to deal with as a human being. God must know this, right? He's aware of this. He says to us that the only way you're going to possibly contend with and deal with and overcome all the different things that we experience as being human is you got to come from a place of love. And you got to come from a place within your heart. So it's like a little exercise of this would be, let's just pause for a moment. I want to close your eyes, and I want you to think of something loving. Someone that you love, could be a dog, could be something, feel love. Just feel a sense of love. Just allow yourself to feel that. Sometimes what people do is they put their hand over their heart. Just feel your heart beating. That's the organ of your heart, but there's so much more to that. And you're feeling the love there. And that feels good. And that feels joyful. Now what you're doing when you're experiencing that joy, you're actually changing, your heart is sending a message to your brain. Right now, your heart is transmitting a message to your brain, and it's altering the neurons in your brain so that the neurons more aligned with love and compassion, being positive, being kind, being resilient. So that, that was like a minute. If you do that every day, what starts to happen is you start to change your consciousness. You start to change how you feel about the people in your life and about things. And then it changes the neurons in your brain. So when something doesn't go the way you want it to go, you're like, all right. You're not freaking out. You're not panicking. You're handling it because there's a strength there. There's a resiliency there. If you do that more and more and more, you're altering the magnetic emanation in your body that goes to your mind. Now, I don't know, did Jesus know this? But I do think it's very interesting that he was right on the mark. The guy was right on the money. So brilliant. Right now, if we could just for a moment, let's like all the people over here, you're just going to send love to all the people over here. They really love you. And then all of you over here, send that over here. And just sense that it's like, I wish you well. I wish you peace. I wish you healing. Just do that for a moment. Right now, by sending love to each other, we become more and more not only a Christian community, a Christian family, but we're disciples of Jesus Christ.